r/ProRevenge. First story. Why you should always be nice to potential hires. This is a bit of a long story about the value of being professional and nice, no matter the position you are in. Mods, I have had to change some details of the story, since my wife's work is very specialized. She must stay anonymous, since stuff like this gets around. My wife and I moved to our current city back in 2013. The standards for my wife's job here are different to the standard back home. She has an associate's degree and most employees wanted a bachelor's degree. However, nothing could stop her, and she kept putting in applications. One day one of the employers she had sent applications to called her back. However, it was not to tell her she had gotten the job. Instead, it was the manager telling her how unprofessional it was of her to put in 4 positions that were obviously above her. In fact, I'm going to delete your email from our system. Please don't apply anymore, it's just a waste of our time. I'll send you later, since you just can't seem to follow directions in my emails. My wife, after she got over her initial shock, asked the manager for her name. I don't see why it matters, but Ivanka Tulip. My wife said thank you, and continued her job hunt. Sure enough, she got the letter in the mail asking her not to apply anymore, citing inability to follow clear directions. My wife held on to this letter. I told her to throw it away, but she insisted on keeping it. Eventually my wife landed a job at one of the biggest employers in the city. Not only that, but this employer was the main supplier of business to the employer that was so rude to my wife. Well, my wife is an extremely precocious and hard-working person, and eventually got her bachelor's, and then became the manager over her crew. One of the manager's responsibilities was to decide who to send business to. My wife told her boss about the letter and what happened and used that as justification that if this is how a business treats potential hires, then they really shouldn't be trusted with our business. Her boss honestly probably did not care very much and just let my wife do what she does. Honestly, my wife is kind of a badass, and it wouldn't surprise me if her boss just gave her whatever it took to keep her happy. Wouldn't you know it, the rude employer's business went way down. In fact, my wife would only give them business if they were the last ones who could be called. This led to the most awesome meeting my wife has had this year. You see, to improve relations, the crappy employer set up a meeting with my wife and my wife's boss and the shitty business's top management. They needed this meeting to show how much value they could add. The day of the meeting comes and everyone introduces themselves. Finally, Mrs. Tulip says she is the manager and how nice it was to meet everyone. That's when my wife said, "Excuse me, I just want to be certain. Are you Mrs. Ivanka Tulip?" "Ivanka, yes, that's me, my wife." "Oh, excellent, I'm so happy to finally meet you in person." Thinking she had an in with my wife, Mrs. Tulip was over the moon. My wife let them carry on and tell her all about how much value they could add to the business and how they could really help out my wife's employer. This is when my wife says, "Well, thank you, but unfortunately I feel that we can't really give business to an employer who we feel has some ethical issues that need to be addressed." Big boss from bad employers: "Excuse me, we were not made aware of any ethical issues. What are you talking about?" That's when my wife brought out the letter that was signed by Mrs. Tulip. My wife then tells them that if they treat potential hires this way, then it was an ethics issue for my wife, and it would be very hard for my wife to give them business. Since she had concerns about the welfare of the business, she couldn't approve any more goes to bad business than absolutely necessary. Mrs. Tulip turned white, and you could hear a pin drop on the other side of the table. My wife thanked them for their time, but apologized and went back to her work. We don't know if anything ever happened to Mrs. Tulip, but that business has since downsized and has gotten a reputation for being a poor choice to send business throughout my wife's organization. TLDR, wife gets shitty response from a bad employer, then the tables get turned when my wife is the one who decides to send the majority of shitty employers' business somewhere else. A quick edit. First of all, wow, I'm totally blown away by how much this post blew up, way beyond what I was expecting. I'll address some concerns people have had. The business in question had multiple things going on, including bad outcomes from previous business that was sent by away. I should have been more clear about that. To be perfectly honest, if I had known how much this would have blown up, I probably wouldn't have shared. To the folks who say this is all made up, I completely understand where you are coming from. I would love to give more details, however it's just not worth it, since my wife works in a small industry. What I will say is that anything you read on Reddit you should take with a huge grain of salt. Believe it, don't believe it, totally up to you. I do understand where you are coming from though, and had I not been there and read this same post from your perspective, I would probably feel the same way. To the folks who think that my wife's only reason for doing what she did was the letter, it's not. All I can say is that the business in question would not have had any issues had they just done what they were supposed to do. That's all I can say about it. My wife's letter was kind of the icing on the cake and an example of poor behavior on their part. Anyways, I hope you all have enjoyed it. Have a great day. I have to get back to work. See you all on the internet when I get back home. Second story. Screw me. Screw you. I want my money. This is a revenge in multiple parts and apologies up front for the length. About 30 years or so ago I was 17 and about to head to university. An acquaintance through my parents' church offered me a job working with him learning to be a pizza chef. Awesome. I'd need money for uni and I'd already had a stack of jobs, so working hard was nothing new for me, but being a cook certainly was. My experience with Italian was limited to Pizza Hut, so I accepted that at the start I was a liability, not a help. I started work, and to start with I worked free. Cool. But when it got to the point about 3 months later that I was opening by myself and taking whole shifts by myself, well, I should be paid. I screwed up all of my 17 years old courage and confronted the owner. Let's call him Nick, because that was his name. He huffed and puffed and tried to tell me how terrible I was, but I stood my ground and now I'm on minimum wage. Not bad in my eyes at the time. I worked there for another 3 years, through most of my uni degree, often putting in 30 hours contact at uni, 30 hours at the restaurant and 30 hours of study. It was hectic, but just became the norm. Towards the end I became a lot more savvy and started researching labor laws, keeping records of my pay packets and end of year tax receipts, and realized Nick and other co-owners were screwing me. I wasn't on the correct rate, they weren't deducting tax correctly, and a couple of other accounting oversights. By then I was working with my, at the time, mate. Let's call him girlfriend creeping dickhead. Girlfriend creeping dickhead. It was Sunday night. The place was packed. I had tickets all the way down my line, and girlfriend creeping dickhead and I were pumped. We had a new boss, who just bought into the business, who thought he was the king of the world because he was now a restaurateur, a right wanker. But after years of having to stay back to cook pizzas on World Cup nights for the boss's friends, or Chustmas, etc., I was sorta used to the grandstanding chest puffing behavior. The night in question the new boss would not let me start the second pizza oven. Think a 2-tier oven. I was only allowed the top tier on because it cost too much. So here I am, oven full, 2 pizza chefs running full speed, and we're only falling behind because one oven wasn't enough and it was starting to cool down from being so full and opened so frequently. New boss gets a couple of tables of mates in. Instead of just asking us to cook some comp garlic bread or whatever, he starts loading up trays himself and putting them in the oven. Not the worst crime, but because he had no idea what he was doing. Every 30s he'd open the oven to check them, cooling the oven down even further, potentially ruining the food we had in there and slowing us down measurably. I had the head chef chewing my ass out as his food was ready to go, but my food on same tickets wasn't. It was hectic and not fun. This garlic bread bandit shit had to stop. Me, new boss, stop fucking with my oven. If you want garlic bread, just ask. I'll get it done immediately for you. New boss, what? Huh? Me, you're messing with my oven. You're cooling it down, and we are too busy for this shit. Just tell me, and I'll make it. New boss, okay. Did he do it? Nope, he kept on. Cue the same conversation another 2 times. The last time I told him I'd blow my stack if he did it again. You see where this is going. He did it again. Now, after being consistently ripped off and abused, so many cookie stories from that place, for 3 years, my time was up there anyway, and this was the time to do it. I looked at girlfriend creeping dickhead and said, yo, we out of here? He looked back and simply said, yup. We stripped our aprons, and in front of the entire restaurant, Pizza Kitchen was in full view of the entire restaurant, threw them on the bench, and told new boss we quit. All these tickets, All the food in the oven you fucked up, and your mate's shitty garlic bread, this is all yours now, good luck. Then we walked out, got some coffees from the baristas, sat in front of the pizza area, and watched him absolutely flounder. He had no idea what he was doing, and there was literally no one else there that could help him. We could see food coming out from the kitchen, but the pizza on the same ticket was taking 20 meters or more longer to come out. Tables were hopping mad, we could hear the grumblings all around us. I'll admit it was dickish, but undeniably satisfying to behold. That's not the ProRevenge though. The ProRevenge was that I'd been stealing my timesheet every Sunday night, photocopying it and then replacing it Monday mornings. I'd been doing that for over a year. I'd also told girlfriend creeping dickhead to do it. Monday I walk in, and Nick was there, and was furious at me. As I walking in you could see his chubby face turn bright red as he bellowed across the restaurant floor, "What the fuck do you think you're doing here? Get the fuck out and never come back." Me, Nick, we've got to talk. We can do it here, or we can do it in your office, but trust me, you want to have this conversation privately. Nick, fine, you come with me then, desperately trying to gain the upper hand back, and he storms to his shitty little office out the back. Nick, bullshit, 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 about how he's going to withhold pay, and a whole heap of other illegal hot air. Me, you done? Good. Here, read this. I hand him a printout of an Excel spreadsheet, a stack of photocopied timesheets, a stack of photocopied payslips, printed copied of the wage awards, all of which detail the amount he's ripped me off for. Me, you owe me $6,000. I'll take cash or a check now. Did I mention he and the other bosses had *JUST* been simultaneously raided by the tax office, and that they and the business were all on thin fucking ice? Yeah, bad timing for Nick the Dick. Nick, sputtering, wringing his hands. But, I can't afford it. Look, I'll show you my bank accounts as he physically starts scrambling to find his bank statements. Me, Nick, I literally don't give a shit about you, your bank accounts or your situation. You owe me $6,000 today, or I take all of this to the tax office and all of the other relevant government departments. That will be *VERY* interested in this, because Nick, I have a feeling, if you're doing this to me, you're doing it to other staff here as well. How? As for not having the money, well, again, not my problem, but you just bought a new $60,000 Pajero, so if you have to run that down to the car yard and sell it, again I don't give a shit, but I get $6,000 today. He literally teared up a little. I'm not sure why, maybe through frustration, rage, or just being screwed by someone he though way beneath him. But seeing a grown man who's abused you for many years cry at your hands is a pretty beautiful thing to behold as a 20 years old kid. I got a check that day for my whole $6,000, and yes, it cashed, but the best was walking out of his office with girlfriend creeping dickhead standing there who deadpan just looked him in the eyes and said, "Nick, we need to talk." And in they walked in to do the same thing. $10K he lost that day. The best part? A few of my friends at the restaurant caught wind of the fact that I had *NRAGED* him and asked what it was all about. I let them know how they were being screwed, how to take copies of all of their timesheets, and where to find the relevant laws. I know of several other people who did the same thing to him. And that was how I left the hospitality industry and started working in my field of study, never to look back. Hope you enjoyed my cake day present to y'all.